Hey everyone. It's been a long time since I've posted anything here. YouTube was giving me too much censorship and shadow banning, but with recent events I decided I'll give it another go. This is a heads up on events we have been watching for years and for this time frame too. First, I'd like to revisit a minute or two of one of my YouTube videos from 2021 on Iceland. Iceland would become a very big problem area, a volcanic problem area, and that going forward we would need to watch and even watch the dormant and extinct volcanoes. So places like Iceland, Italy, Japan, all places we've had a heavy watch on also. Over the years, volcanoes have started to wake up, dormant ones and even quote-unquote extinct ones. But one of our big problem areas we had by name was Iceland. Moving forward, we could tell it was destabilizing and was only a matter of time before we see an Iceland eruption or even magma surfacing. So we've been heavily monitoring it since June of 2020, watching on and off swarms as it was destabilizing and becoming more of a problem area. Then when the swarm came back stronger here recently, we knew it was time. I made some posts on expecting an eruption and magma, and now we are seeing an eruption. Now this is just a small piece of the puzzle to a much bigger picture, a much bigger problem. And it's no coincidence that we were able to track and call the eruption of something that hasn't happened in 6,000 years. So the 2016 post said that this was coming in the future. The mid-2020 post said, okay, it's here and destabilizing and could happen within months. And then less than a year later, the bigger swarm hits, and boom, we have what we were constantly warning about, an Iceland dormant eruption. So Iceland volcano dormant for 6,000 years blows. That's the headlines you're seeing right now. So keep eyes on Iceland going forward. In the near future, all of Iceland and even Greenland will be problem areas. Magma under there is getting very bad. Now that is definitely occurring. It definitely wasn't over with, and that was only the beginning to something much bigger. All of Iceland is going to become a huge problem area, along with Italy and other places around the world. So along with the warnings of our weakening protective shield and the auroras that we would start to see more southernly and more often, was also a big warning about magma and volcanic issues, right down to certain spots we'd see go most active first and become our first major problem areas. For years, we said that we'd start to see all this occurring simultaneously in 2023, and like birth pangs, it will get stronger from there, eventually trickling into things that the everyday person can't deny. So the general public will start to take note. Of course, they will try to explain some of these things away, like we've always said. Now, it's late 2023, and everything is now heightened and happening exactly as warned. Even people who aren't watchers are starting to take note. This will intensify, and we will even see it here as well. I've said it 1,000 times before it ever started to occur. Watch for dormant and extinct volcanoes to start waking up, even new ones. Those words are in tons of old posts and old videos. This will be a big warning sign, though, especially when we see dormant ones in Iceland and Italy start to wake up suddenly. That is a big sign for where we are in the process. Now, I have 2016 posts and notes on that for this time frame. Now, that exact thing. Right now, as we speak, it is happening. Both our big problem areas are currently simultaneously roaring to life in a very big way. Iceland declares state of emergency due to major volcanic threat. I said that a volcano there in Iceland that hadn't erupted in 6,000 years would, and it did. Happening now, though, major cracks in the street that are now coming into town as they face an even bigger volcanic threat there, and are now under state of emergency. They've also had evacuations. So exactly as we were waiting for it, watching for it, and warning about, that's happening. Now, with Italy, that was going to be another big major problem area when Iceland went off. Or started to go off. So with Italy, here's an NBC News article, and this is from November 2023, this month. 2 supervolcanoes a world apart have the attention of scientists. In recent months, more than 1,000 earthquakes have rattled the area around a volcano in southern Italy, stoking fears that it may soon erupt again after nearly 5 centuries. It too is coming back to life as warned, but all of Italy will become a major problem area. Now be prepared for all outcomes inside the saga of a super volcano that's waking up, and A supervolcano in Italy is waking up, the recent news headlines read. Now, since my warnings, not just those, but other dormant and extinct volcanoes are waking up all over as well. Here are some of the headlines. Volcano, dormant for almost 100 years, erupts in spectacular fashion. Magma found simmering under an extinct volcano. Extinct volcano has woken up and scientists say it could erupt at any moment. 2023 deadly swarm of earthquakes in Japan caused by magma moving through extinct volcano. 2023 Alaska volcano dormant for a century, delivering ominous warning signs, significant unrest. Strange earthquakes in Utah reveal volcanic activity hidden below the desert. These quakes are a reminder that black rock is still active after all these years and that this dormant volcano is not extinct. We need to improve seismic and volcanic monitoring in this area so that we are aware of small changes that may occur, they say. The same thing is going on in places like California and Washington as well. Believe it or not, and I've said this for many years, there will come a time where we need to watch places like the East Coast. New York will be a problem area for magma, volcanic earthquakes, etc., and so will Texas. Even Mike from around the world has said Texas. I think he's also said the East Coast. So those are issues we've been watching for because all that magma under there. I mean, you can find information now that's starting to actually come out about, volcanic activity under Texas or under the East Coast. So that will become problem areas for us as well. Volcanically, this is all going on as we are simultaneously getting radiation pouring in from our weakened protective shield and the southern auroras, exactly as warned in 2 a T. Weakening shield, the sun, radiation, auroras, magma, the binary system, pole shift, all of it. Here we go. Like birth pangs. Now with the auroras, we are watching for these to go more southerly and a lot more often. It happens on very rare occasions, but the big warning was that it will start to happen a lot more and start to become the new norm, or what they consider the new norm. Now that's a very bad thing and it's happening. Just note, it used to take a very high-class, X-class solar flare that was very fast-moving at high speeds to even get an aurora that spread that far south. Now with our weakening shield, it can happen from the slightest of activity. This year's events has not been caused by high-class, X-class solar flares, but due to getting in a lot easier because of our protective shield is weakening and depleting. Now, past occurrences where there was a major solar flare and a random yearly occurrence, years apart, that caused auroras to reach more southern than normal. Now, this would be 1859, 1882, 1903, 1921, 1972, 1989, 1991, 2001, and 2003. Well, up until now. We expected a big weakening event from 2022 going into 2023, and then accelerating from there. So that's just the start of what we expected to be a big weakening point. Now that's exactly what the data is showing is taking place. We've been saying that for years. Now I was born in 1991, so that means in my lifetime, it had only happened 3 times, and from extreme flares alone. Like extreme flares caused southern auroras up until now. As of last year, weaker flares started to spark major storms. Now this really ramped up here in 2023. This year alone, we've had at least 6 events where separate flare events, including ones that weren't that strong at all, have sparked big geomagnetic activity and aurora storms seen in places they are never seen. Like these 6 events this year had them over Texas and Oklahoma in my location. Not at all normal. I was even able to get photos of, auroras over Oklahoma. There will come a time when the auroras reach places like Mexico. Now this is a very bad thing. Remember that. We have not even seen any major flares yet, and this is already happening like this. So ask yourself, what will we see when we get a really big, dangerous flare and our protective shield is this weak? Expect major aurora storms in places they should not be at all. While it's very pretty, this is a very bad thing. This is one of those telltale signs we've said so long to watch for. Now, while researching these events, an event where auroras pushed more southerly than normal and only due to large significant flares, it showed this. 1859 was the Carrington event. Remember, that was a major event that caused fires, sparks were flying, and people were even getting electrocuted. 1882 was the aurora of November 17th, 1882. It was a great aurora. Is what they considered it or called it. 1921 was the Great Storm of May 1921. Technological impacts in some cases causing destructive fires. August 4th, 1972. The storm caused the accidental detonation of numerous U.S. naval mines near North Vietnam. 1989. In March 1989, a powerful solar flare provoked a geomagnetic storm, which subsequently set off a major March 13th power blackout in Canada that left 6 million people without electricity. 1991 was known as the Great Geomagnetic Storm of 91. 2001 was the big solar flare and solar storm of 2001. And now that was a really big one. 2003 was also big, the Halloween solar storms. Now bring us to 2023. Northern lights, auroras over places like Texas and Oklahoma, 6 times already throughout 2023. But that's not the biggest point. The biggest thing to note, again, is that these were not large flares that caused these events this year, like the flares listed above were. It used to take large, very significant flares to do this. Our protective shield is drastically weaker than it was back then, and it's weakening. Smaller flares are setting off low auroras. Think of what a big, significant flare like the Carrington event or 2001 flare is going to do to our infrastructure. And remember, we aren't even in solar maximum yet. It's a real possibility before too long, watching 2024 through 2028 solar storms. But either way, just remember, it's not an if, it's a when. Now, with the solar radiation coming in and the auroras and also the exotic particles of radiation from the binary system which cause the sun to react, we need to heavily watch all of this. I've been speaking on a big solar flare event for over 10 years now. It was always our goal to start watching more heavily in and after the year 2023. As we move on, it will get a lot hotter from the sun, more cancers, a lot more die-off events, especially vegetation and food. Look at this Fox News article that just went viral about the coming solar storm. Solar superstorm could wipe out the internet for weeks or months, scientists say. Now, it's not just the internet, it's the whole grid. Our grid going down would mean wires melt, buildings burn down, vehicles, no power or gas, no fridges, freezers, or groceries for food, no banks or ATMs, no heat and air. As fires are burning and emergencies are occurring, no fire department or 911, etc. But anyway, solar superstorm could wipe out the internet, scientists say. We even told you all that eventually they will have to put in place warning systems for this. Look at this part. Professor Peter Becker is working with a team whose goal is to create an early warning system for dangerous solar activity that could damage critical technology.
Well, it's not just pretty lights, though, when it comes to the Aurora Borealis. In fact, some of these solar storms can actually disrupt and even damage technology on Earth. The Carrington event happened in the year 1859, stands as the strongest observed solar storm in modern human history. Now, that caused a lot of problems. It's back when we had the telegraph, but we almost had one in 2012. Earth narrowly missed that one. So if or when it happens, a solar storm that impacts the globe could become a $2 trillion disaster because it is a magnetic energy that comes through with these storms, and that's where we could have problems. If it were to occur, might take a decade for us to recover. Some of the destruction of communication infrastructure could bring about the end of the internet. You heard me right. This idea was actually explored by a UC Irvine student. She researched the potential in her paper entitled Solar Superstorms, Planning for an Internet Apocalypse. One of the greatest dangers facing the internet with the potential for global impact is a powerful solar superstorm. Well, the federal government has actually assigned a team of scientists at George Mason University $13 million to study this potential internet apocalypse and keep us away or help us prepare for dealing with some sort of solar storm that could cause this. Let's bring in the principal investigator for the project, Professor Peter Becker is at George Mason University. Peter, solar storms causing the internet apocalypse. That sounds like a worst case scenario. What does it look like?
Yeah, well, as you pointed out, it's been in the news a lot lately. There have been articles all over the place, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post. But yeah, the idea is there have been a lot of flares. Flares are when the sun brightens and we see the radiation. And that's kind of the muzzle flash. And then the cannon shot is the coronal mass ejection, as you mentioned. So we can see the flash, but then the coronal mass ejection can go off in some random direction in space. But we can tell when they're actually going to head towards Earth. And that gives us about 18 hours of warning, maybe 24 hours of warning before those particles actually get to Earth and start messing around with Earth's magnetic field. So yeah, you mentioned the Carrington event in 1859. There was actually also a big flare in Halloween of 2003. And so the Carrington event actually was a coronal mass ejection that did reach Earth, and it totally wiped out the telegraph system. So the telegraph system was their internet of the day, and sparks were literally flying off the telegraph lines. And there's even rumors that some operators might have even been electrocuted. It was total mayhem, and the system went down for a matter of weeks. And of course, a telegraph system infrastructure is very robust compared to the modern internet with all our little cables and fibers and things. So an event like that occurring now is something the internet is not built to handle. So we're talking not just the electrical grid, but huge economic consequences, especially because of the global wired economy now. So yeah, if it happened now, if the Carrington event happened right now, we're talking $10 to $20 billion per day of damage to the U.S. economy alone, and possibly weeks to months to repair the infrastructure, because you're talking about all those little electronics closets and all the office buildings basically getting fried and hardware having to be replaced. Anyway, but the good news is we're monitoring the sun at Mason. That's one of the big things we're doing under this contract that you mentioned. And we actually have satellites watching the far side of the sun. So that gives you more advanced notice. We've got satellites called SOHO on the far side of the sun, and we're getting data from those. So that gives us a little more early warning. So the thing is, the sun's going to do what it's going to do. We can't control the sun. And in long term, we have to harden the infrastructure on Earth. But in the short term, at least if we have a warning, every minute counts, because you can put satellites in safe mode. You can take transformers offline from the grid so they don't fry. So there's things you can do to mitigate the problem. And then more long term, you're talking about hardening the internet. And that's, of course, an economic challenge, because it's sort of like an insurance policy. You may never need it, and it would cost trillions to really harden the system. So, the bottom line is always the driving factor. We don't really know if that's going to happen. So early warning right now is really the key for us.
So when you're talking about the magnetic energy, I kind of get that idea that coming into the Earth would be a problem, but killing the internet, how does that happen? Does it come in and just fry everything? Because then electrical grids probably would be very vulnerable as well.
Yeah, it's pretty insidious. You do get magnetic distortion of Earth's magnetic field, and that drives inductive currents that drive the power grid crazy. And the more you disconnect the grid, the safer it is. But the other thing that people don't realize is it can drive an inductive current through the surface of the Earth too. And then you get this kind of insidious thing where you can actually get current from ground. So everybody thinks, oh, if my computer's grounded, I'm okay. But in an event like this, if you drive inductive currents to the surface of the Earth, it can almost work backwards, and you can end up actually frying things that you thought were relatively safe. And another side note, sometimes people think, well, we're okay because we have fiber optics. Not really, because fiber optics, it's true that the light isn't affected, but the problem is that you still have sheaths of copper involved in all this stuff. And even undersea cables, which are fiber optic, still have copper sheaths, and they also have repeater transmitters periodically on the ocean floor, and those run on electric power. So even the undersea cables could possibly be fried. And by the way, some of these events, so we mentioned that the Carrington event of 1859, there's evidence for much larger superstorms in the past. They found evidence for enhanced carbon-14 in tree rings in France, and also in ice samples in Greenland, that show that there were huge flares, maybe hundreds of times stronger than the Carrington flare. And what happens is the solar radiation actually enhances the production of radioactive carbon in the atmosphere, and that filters down and gets taken in by living things. And we can see 14,000 years ago in the tree rings, there's a big spike in this carbon-14, indicating a huge amount of solar particles were stimulating the production of this radioactive carbon-14 at the time. Now, in an event like that happened, again, totally unpredictable, but you can't predict solar flares any more than you can predict earthquakes. But a super flare like that, then you're talking, it's pretty much off the books. We don't really know what something like that would actually do. We haven't observed that
I'm interested
in recent human history. I mean, 14,000 years ago.
Peter, before you go, we only have a few seconds left, but how would we find out? Is there a warning system that'll be in place in case you capture that we only have 24 hours to prepare? How will we know about this?
Yeah, I think it probably wouldn't. I mean, I don't think arid sirens would go off or anything like that, but the word would spread through power grid operators, satellite operators, DoD. DoD systems are more robust than commercial systems, but still they have to take those offline. So basically, there would be, we would know about it publicly that there's a big flare coming. And I suppose, people would be warned and probably would disconnect stuff, actually, if it was a large enough event. But yeah, the power grid operators would know. And again, we can probably mitigate the problems with the early warning. So that's really the key. So that's one of the main things we're doing at Mason, is watching the sun, but also modeling the sun to try to improve our predictive capability and understand better the connection between the flare, which remember is the flash. The flash reaches us in 8 minutes. And then that's when the clock starts ticking, and we have 18 to 24 hours. So the more time we have
I hate to interrupt you because it's so fascinating, but we do have to go.
It's not only the grid that would go down, but it would have a big time impact on everything, including all living things. You not only want to watch for electric issues, internet going down, but also chemical plant and other plant explosions, earthquakes, volcanoes, food supply, etc., and the health impact on people and animals. I've been watching the sun for years, NASA SOHO, etc. I closely monitor solar flare models and solar wind prediction maps. Hits the magnetosphere and magnetopause take, the tech data ionospheric charging, and so on. Like I said before, it doesn't even take strong solar activity to cause big things now, but a big flare would be devastating. Our shield is much weaker and is weakening so fast now. I saw this graph going around from SO, and it's right on the money as well. Here's the data on our protective shield weakening. In 2000, NASA announced that globally, the magnetic field had already weakened by 10% since the 19th century. In 2010, the European Space Agency updated that number from 10% to a 15% loss, so another 5% loss in just 10 years. Remember, 1859 up to 2000 was a 10% loss, so a 10% loss in 141 years. Then suddenly, it was a 5% loss in only 10 years. 4 years later, in 2014, scientists stated that, and I quote, Earth's magnetic field is weakening 10 times faster now. Live Science. And that Live Science publishing goes on to say, the scientists who conducted the study are still unsure why the magnetic field is weakening, but one likely reason is that Earth's magnetic poles are getting ready to flip. That's coming from the European Space Agency's Swarm Mission Manager. So nearing pole shift. Now here's more. Previously, researchers estimated that the field was weakening about 5% per century, but the new data revealed that the field is actually weakening at 5% per decade, or 10 times faster than thought. But then, what do you know? Reporting got scarce. We are drastically and very quickly losing our protective shield, and like everything else, instead of alarming the public to actual noteworthy events, they simply just stop reporting, or stretch the data as not to cause any panic. New info is not coming out like it was. So why the silence now? What are some of the things that our protective shield does for us? The very shield we are quickly losing. NOAA.gov, about Earth's protective shield. Earth is surrounded by invisible gases that form a thin protective blanket that we call the atmosphere. It contains the oxygen that we breathe, as well as other important gases such as nitrogen, carbon dioxide, water vapor, and the ozone. It protects us from the sun's harmful rays, burns and destroys meteors that are headed towards Earth, and it keeps our planet from having extreme temperature changes. Without this protective blanket, we would have very hot days and freezing nights. Hence the climate chaos we are starting to experience now. Think about food and vegetation also, and health impacts this has on the public. So when our protective shield goes away, Earth, as we currently know it, goes also. The next great Earth disaster cycle. This is all to do with the weakening shield, pole shift, binary system, etc. And I'd also like to revisit this from an older video on Earth being like a pressure cooker and like an egg. A new type of cosmic radiation was pouring out of Antarctica and at our South Pole. It is just taking in too much cosmic rays and spitting it back out. It's also heating Earth's core and causing core expansion and heightened volcanism. With extra cosmic radiation, intense increasing heat, and core expansion, you have crustal displacement, like boiling an egg too long. I did this little experiment with overboiling an egg too long as an example of Earth being heated from the inside, causing core expansion and crustal displacement, Earth cracks, and Earth shifting. I was going onto Google when I noticed this article, though. Extremely powerful cosmic rays are raining down on us, and no one knows where they are coming from. Well, if you've been following the 5 Waves of Energy Cosmic Rays notes and Mike's speeches since at least 2014, then you know that this is not true, and we know exactly where this is coming from. The increase in cosmic rays is coming from the binary brown dwarf system. Also, in this article, they have it dead wrong when they state this about cosmic rays. These rays, which are passing through us at this very moment, are not harmful to us or any other life on the surface of Earth. Okay, so that is not how it works. I'm not sure why they would even have published that. It is a scientifically known fact that it is quite the opposite, and has quite the opposite effect. Cosmic rays have a huge impact on both the Earth and people. Cosmic radiation feeds into Earth's core, causing core expansion and crustal displacement, shifting and cracking of the Earth. Cosmic rays radiation also heats Earth from the inside like a pressure cooker, hence why we are concerned about volcanic activity everywhere on the Earth. Cosmic rays in large amounts are harmful to the Earth, people, and animals, so the above statement is false. With humans and animals, cosmic radiation breaks down and damages DNA, and also causes heart problems from irregular heartbeat arrhythmias to sudden cardiac death. These are all scientifically proven. I will link all the links to those below also. Also, UVC is not supposed to reach ground level, but it is now, and it's very harmful. See the link below to my video from 2018, Scientific Links to Sudden Cardiac Death and Cosmic Radiation. And please note, though, that the 18% or that the 13% increase it has is now an 18% increase. It is increased from 13 to 18%. Okay. And also, my other video, UVC Reaching Ground Level, UVC Explained. This article goes on to say, many are much too powerful to have originated from our sun. Well, of course not, but we've covered that for years and have followed the increase over time. It will continue to increase, and the Earth will continue to take on increased amounts of cosmic radiation and heat up from the inside like a pressure cooker as the system nears. Magma will be on the move in a big way. Also, with the Earth cracks all over and fault line separations, etc. When you boil an egg too long, it begins to crack. That's what the Earth is doing, being heated from the inside so much that its surface begins to crack. So this egg right here represents the Earth being heated by cosmic rays. You see the Earth cracks. This kind of represents that. Okay, so if you see how it works, when you boil too long, you kind of have core expansion, and the shell, the outer crust, the shell begins to crack. We have Earth cracks all over. Africa has them really bad. You have smaller ones, big ones. That's something to look into. But this represents volcanoes going off and Earth cracks. That's pretty much what's occurring from all the radiation that is pouring in due to the binary system, solar activity, and our weakening shield. Also note this, don't let people lie to you. While HAARP is very real, it's not the main driver of all of this. Of course, there's always something that major things need to be blamed on. Just remember that, though. Okay, so something else. I know half the people following here are mostly just scientific, but I have biblical followers here also. Now, I'll be touching on that aspect of things as well. I think even the less biblical people who are mostly just scientific should still stick around for this part and hear this part out with an open mind. It's very interesting. I personally have studied biblical prophecy for many years. Now, this is a big warning of the times we are in. Now, this is fitting with everything else that's going on. I started a group back in 2011 that had over 20,000 members join, where I talked about biblical prophecies that were being fulfilled and were coming. End times news headlines and what I expected to unfold in the coming years. This past year has seen so much as far as biblical prophecies go, more than I've ever seen while watching and studying. But do y'all realize how many huge Bible prophecies are simultaneously coming into convergence at an accelerated rate right now at this very moment? Ones I've been watching for years, all happening now at once. Everything from an increase in natural disasters, major red heifer offerings news, the Third Temple, Euphrates drying up, the plot of land needed and acquired on Mount of Olives, coming into Psalms 83 war with all exact locations named, Gog and Magog and the Ezekiel 38 war, Gaza Bible verses, Amos 1:7, Ashkelon, Ashdod, and Ekron, nearing Damascus becoming a ruinous heap, the peace treaty, nations coming against Israel in Zechariah 14, the AC nearing, the beast system rising before our eyes, a new world order, many Israel and Middle East prophecies suddenly nearing completion, and so much more. I could go on and on. Also, I have a whole study on this, but the pole shift is very biblical. There are Bible verses all throughout the Bible about the pole shift. It's all accelerating so fast now and so suddenly. Amos, but I will send a fire on the wall of Gaza, which shall devour the places thereof. For Gaza shall be forsaken, and Ashkelon a desolation. They shall drive out Ashdod at the noonday, and Ekron shall be rooted up. All these places are currently in the news for exact said things. Hamas and Hezbollah and Iran, all biblical prophecies. I've been saying to watch them. I knew it was only a matter of time. This was another big warning of mine. Now the Euphrates also, Revelation, and the sixth angel poured out his vial upon the great river Euphrates, and the water thereof was dried up, that the way of the kings of the east might be prepared. Euphrates is drying up at unprecedented levels, and they call it historic and biblical. China and the mention of Russia partnering, and even with Iran, all biblical. Iraq, all of it. Rabbis, Israel, and the Temple Institute talking a lot about pushing for the third temple now as well. The Temple Institute is big there in Israel and is known as an organization in Israel focusing on establishing the third temple. Its long-term aims are to build the third Jewish temple on the Temple Mount, on the site occupied by the Dome of the Rock, and to reinstate animal sacrificial worship, as foretold about in the Bible in end times. Very big news. Recently, the Temple Institute announced it has acquired an acceptable plot of land on the Mount of Olives upon which it can conduct the offering of the red heifer. They needed that land. That was a big step, and they've now said that they've acquired that plot of land. Also, the official Temple Mount Institute of Jerusalem and Holy Temple says, the Temple Institute has exciting news to share with you about a major advance in our efforts to raise a red heifer whose ashes can be used for purification. A huge step toward the building of the Holy Temple and the renewal of the divine service. Red heifers arrive in Israel. They go on to say it's very rare. There hasn't been a red cow here for 2,000 years, and we managed to find several. It's probably a very special thing. The farm will be open to the public within a couple of months, the group said. They noted that they see education on this topic as one of the several steps towards the construction of a new temple. They added that the 5 heifers that arrived were the only ones that they managed to find, which demonstrates the creature's rarity and uniqueness. Now that the heifers are in Israel, they must be fed and cared for. We welcome all who wish to play an active part in this group undertaking literally of biblical proportions. So they call it biblical proportions, and that is the truth. Now this was an update to that, updated and posted this September. The Temple Institute, an organization dedicated to preparations for the third temple in Jerusalem, they're there in Jerusalem, so that's a big thing, made the groundbreaking announcements on their YouTube channel that the calf's arrival is a pivotal moment in the fulfillment of ancient Bible prophecies. Remember, it can't be just any red cow. There are several things that must qualify it, such as absolutely no blemishes or marks. Now, usually red heifers have blemishes. The heifer not only had to be without spot, no blemishes, but its horns, hoofs, and even eyelashes have to be red as well. Super rare, but suddenly 5? Are they genetically modifying them to be ready for, I know that's crazy to say, but could that be a possibility that they are genetically modifying them if they haven't found them in all these years and suddenly they find 5 of them? Okay, so the land being ready, the sacrifices being almost ready, and the push for the third temple sets up fulfillment of the Antichrist. Both Daniel and Jesus tell us that the anti-Messiah will defile the third temple before the return of the true Messiah. They both call the spiritual defilement in the temple the abomination of desolation. So when you see standing in the holy place the abomination that causes desolation spoken of through the prophet Daniel, let the reader understand. Now, I remember when Obama was in office, everybody said that Obama was the abomination of desolation. That was pretty interesting. Anyways, okay, Daniel says he will confirm a covenant of peace for 1 week, often interpreted as 7 years, but will break that covenant in the middle of the term. The anti-Messiah will also proclaim himself to be God, and this will be under a beast system of control, like a dictatorship. Exactly what they're trying to bring in right now. A new world order, great reset, whatever you want to call it. The beast system. The Temple Institute, as well as the Temple Mount, and Eretz Yisrael Faithful Movement are the 2 main Jewish organizations responsible for making preparations for the third temple and the reinstatement of sacrificial worship. They have announced that they are ready. And coincidentally enough, all of the Middle East stuff is going on during that. It all fits. Now they even say the golden menorah, the 7-branched candelabra, has been crafted, along with the right musical instruments, such as the silver trumpets, the harps to worship, etc., that King David did 3,000 years ago. They say they have all that ready. The Temple Institute School is also training certified DNA-tested descendants of the high priest Aaron to perform the temple duties. So they've been DNA testing these people, getting them ready, building the things they need. It's all coming together. And the final element, the red heifer, is being readied. Just to name a few things. Like I said, though, it seems it's all coming together, both scientifically and biblically speaking. Now, I'll leave you on this note. Luke 21:28. And when you see these things begin to come to pass, then look up and lift up your heads, for your redemption draweth nigh. Now, some will say, no one knows the exact day or hour per the Bible. Yes, that's very true. However, we were told directly to watch for the signs to know that the times we are in. Now, Matthew 16:2-3 say, He answered and said unto them, When it is evening, ye say, It will be fair weather, for the sky is red. And in the morning, it will be foul weather today, for the sky is red and lowering. Just remember that part. For the sky is red and lowering. O ye hypocrites, ye can discern the face of the sky, but can ye not discern the signs of the times? Matthew 24. Watch therefore, for ye know not what hour the Lord doth come. So we don't know the exact day and the exact hour. But know this, that if the goodman of the house had known in what watch the thief would come, he would have watched, and would not have suffered his house to be broken up. See, he would have been ready. He would have known the times we are in, or the times he was in. We are supposed to know the times we are in based off the signs and birth pangs. Here is my favorite verses for it. Revelation 3 says, If therefore thou shalt not watch, I will come on thee as a thief, and thou shalt not know what hour I will come upon thee. So if you don't watch, if you do not watch, it will come on you like a thief. But we do watch. We do know the season we are in. Those who are awake will know the times. You see the birth pangs happening right now, and they are intensifying, increasing, and getting close together. Now, that's why they're called birth pangs. Exactly like a woman in labor. Now, no one knows the exact day or hour, but we as Christians know the exact time frame by signs and warnings and what God says to watch for. People tell me all the time that that day will overtake us all like a thief in the night, just like it says. So we have no clue at all. But what it really says is that to the ones who are asleep, it will come like a thief in the night, not to the ones who are awake. 2 Thessalonians 5, for example. This is my favorite one. For yourselves know perfectly that the day of the Lord so cometh as a thief in the night. For when they shall say, Peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them, as travel upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. But ye, brethren, are not in darkness, that day should overtake you as a thief. You are all children of light, and the children of the day. We are not of the night, nor of the darkness. So right there, plain as day, it will take those in the dark as a thief in the night. But we are not in the darkness. We are of the light. We all know what times we are in. Okay, lastly, remember, Psalms 46, that's a good one to leave you on. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore will not we fear, though the earth be removed, and though the mountains be carried into the midst of the sea, though the waters thereof roar and be troubled, though the mountains shake with the swelling thereof. Keep all that in mind as you move forward. This is really big. All these things that are happening and occurring. This is big. Everything. Not just that, but we need to watch financially, like the economic collapse, the dollar destabilization of like the U.S. dollar, the market crashes, the ushering in of a central bank digital currency, doing away with money, but having a CBDC, which is a central bank digital currency, and then also having a social credit score linked to that. Whatever you do online, whatever you buy online, whatever you say online will eventually be connected to things like your bank, your electric, your heat and air. Under the beast system, whatever you do or say, this will bring about consequences They can turn off your heat and air when they want to. They can turn off anything. I mean, the vehicles, they're trying to go to certain vehicles so they can turn that off on you. They want to have full control over everything you have. I mean, even turn your money off if they want. So when the dollar crashes and there's no more US dollar or world dollars and we're under a central bank digital currency, you know, a world currency or however they want to do this, and then you went and you bought something you weren't supposed to or said something online you weren't supposed to, and now, boom, they've turned off your money. Mark of the beast. This lays the way or paves the pathway for the mark of the beast, which would go hand in hand with the whole Antichrist stuff and the whole, you know, the rise of the beast system and the third temple and all that they're readying for. This all fits so perfectly together like a puzzle piece, and it's all happening in convergence, you know, like simultaneously together. So it all needs to be watched. You got scientific stuff, you have weather events, you have, you know, things going on like that with climate chaos. You have separate things from that are economically speaking, or wars, you know, certain pushes for certain control that I can't name right here. I have to watch what I say because apparently that's why I was being taken down before so much here. That's why I stopped doing YouTube. But I don't know, it's all coming together and it's all there. So keep watching. This will only increase and intensify like birth pangs.